Welcome to Throwing Stones. I'm your host, Mark Lesmeister. Last time we looked at crossbows, and I'm sure some of you who watched it might have thought, I thought this show was supposed to be about catapults. Why is he going on about crossbows? Well, one historically important type of catapult, the ballista, developed from the Greek crossbow known as the gastrophates. This was a gradual process that began with the Greeks around 400 BCE and continued with the Romans, who used the ballista to great advantage. Julius Caesar mentions devices like the ballista several times in his writings. Let's look at the basic parts of a crossbow as we consider some of the changes needed to turn it into a ballista: bow, the string, and the stock, or tiller. Now, the gastrophates size limited the size of bolts it could fire. So, if you're a Greek weapons designer, the first thing you're going to want to do is to make your device much bigger. The Greeks designed a larger version of the crossbow called the oxyballistae, which was mounted on a tripod. The problem is, the larger you make your weapon, the less practical it is to use a bow. At a certain point, a bow becomes so thick that it is impossible to bend it. You could use an idea that some historians trace back to engineers working for Alexander the Great. Instead of a bow, you use wooden rods. To get the rods to store elastic energy like the bow does, you mount the bases of the rods in a bundle of twisted cords. When the rods are bent back towards the stock, the cords get twisted even more. This stores energy so that when you release the rods, they spring back to their original position. Of course, you still want a string attached to the rods to push the bolt forward when the rods spring back. As we have seen, drawing a bowstring requires great strength. Pulling back on this string with just your bare hands would be impossible. So, you would want to mount a winch to pull the string back. Once you get the string pulled back, your new weapon is ready to be loaded. Ballistas can be designed to fire bolts like a crossbow, or fire stones or other weights. Once the ballista is loaded, the string is released and the ballista fires. A mechanism of this size couldn't be carried by hand, so the whole thing was mounted on a support stand. Some of these things were frightfully big, literally. Caesar tells a story of an amphibious landing during the first invasion of Britain. The beach where he wanted to land his legions was being well defended by the Britons. Caesar ordered that his fastest warships be loaded up with weapons, including ballistae. Ballistae is the plural of ballista. The boats were run up on the shore and the weapons fired. As Caesar tells it, scared by the strange shape of the warships and the unfamiliar machines, the natives halted and retreated. We'll learn more about ballistae after I build the model from the kit. So here is the completed ballista. Like the crossbow model, it only simulates the action of a ballista because it uses a stretch rubber band to store energy. But it does show the basic shape, and it also allows me to demonstrate an important feature of the ballista. Mounting the weapon on a stand allowed the ballista to repeatedly fire bolts with the same trajectory. Trajectory is what we call the path of a moving object. Caesar tells of an incident in which 4 bolts fired over a long distance from a Scorpius, which is a smaller version of the ballista, hit in the exact same place one after another during the siege of Avaricum. Let's do a test of our ballista. I have set my test dragon Smoggette a distance away from my ballista, which is at the edge of the frame. Let's see if the bolts follow the same trajectory. Looks like they all hit Smoggette in about the same place. Let's look at the trajectories again in slow motion, just to be sure. We are fortunate to have tools like slow motion to do that now. Galileo had to draw the paths of projectiles by hand. Another tool we use are called Cartesian coordinates, because one of the people who developed the idea was the 17th century philosopher René Descartes. In Cartesian coordinates, we describe the location of something using two numbers, like giving an address in Manhattan. It's at the corner of 1st Avenue and 42nd Street. When I do this, I use a computer program called Logger Pro that lets me look at a trajectory frame by frame and plot the points, which it then puts on a graph. Our Cartesian plot, or an XY graph, is a powerful tool in science and math. Next time on Throwing Stones, we'll talk about a device that looks more like the catapult you may be familiar with, the onager. Until then, let me leave you with these words from Julius Caesar. Without training, they lacked knowledge. Without knowledge, they lacked confidence. Without confidence, they lacked victory.